My name is Jennifer, and I want to share with you a Christmas story that I wrote in the 1980s. It's a story that has as its setting Fredericton, New Brunswick. And the story is called The Celluloid Angel. It was an unusually snowy Christmas season in Fredericton when the Celluloid Angel came into our house. All afternoon of that Christmas Eve day, the flakes grew thicker and thicker as they whirled around the Salvation Army man ringing his bell on Queen Street. It was because of the snow that my mother took a shortcut through the department store to the parking lot. But as she made her way through the aisles filled with last-minute shoppers, she suddenly stopped in front of the Christmas ornaments arranged haphazardly in bins. Look at the perfect face on that angel. A totally perfect face. She pointed to a cream-coloured celluloid angel upended in one of the bins. Although it was more expensive than all the other half-priced ornaments, we were to have it. The last Christmas purchase, it was placed on top of already overflowing bags. We drove home slowly, in the Christmas whiteness that now covered the old stone church on Brunswick Street, the snow that was settling on the verandas of the large old homes and dimming the brightness of Christmas lights around the front porches. My mother said little as we passed the snow-covered benches, the lampposts, and the wading pool in Wilmot Park. Across the road, the grand lines of the RCMP headquarters were also being softened by the falling snow. And beyond the magnificence of that building, whiteness covered the dark of the St. John River. That's a perfect face, my mother breathed, the kind of face that Italian painters for centuries have tried to paint. Perfect, so very perfect. She was talking less to me than to herself, but I knew she was referring to the celluloid angel. When we reached home, my father appeared in the kitchen with his newspaper, and he asked where we had been, as though the many bags of goods did not themselves give answer. You must see what we got for the front window, my mother answered as she unwrapped the angel. She turned on a little switch to light the taper that the angel held in front of her. Immediately, shadows fell softly over the pale face, and the high-arched brows gave it a sense of wonder. In the glow of the light, my mother spoke with quiet reverence. It's lovely. That was enough to launch my father into delivery of his Christmas message. The waste, the spending, the nonsense, the frippery. Where was more junk going to be stored? And were there not already too many ornaments in the house? And why had my mother impetuously invited total strangers for Christmas dinner? Wasn't our own family quite large enough? There was no stopping him now. Most of this we'd heard before. In fact, to be exact, we'd heard it every Christmas Eve for as long as I could remember. Only the occasion of the delivery changed. And then he asked my mother the question that changed the mood that Christmas Eve. Why did you get this celluloid department store thing with painted golden wings? My mother did not answer, but she began slowly to slice a ham for the supper table. Evening and darkness had descended. It was Christmas Eve. I stared at the pink flush on the angel's pale face. The eyes seemed to be averted, not looking at the glow of her taper, but wistfully looking aside. Outside, the snow kept falling on the cemetery across the road where Jake Thompson had been buried after a duck hunting accident on one of the islands in the river. The cemetery where Stevie Lang's little sister lay in a grave with a carved lamb on top of it. The cemetery where 2 executed brothers had been buried. And the cemetery where wooden crosses marked the graves of German soldiers who had died far from home. The snow evened and whitened all the graves. I was away for many Christmases after that one. Each year, as far as I know, the little angel was lit and put among the pine sprays on the front window ledge. And each year I was told that someone had remarked on the delicacy of the face. And each year I am sure my father found Christmas more of an intrusion and participated less and less. When my mother died, the house was to be sold. A lot of what my father had referred to as junk was given away. Most of the Christmas ornaments that had accumulated through the years went in a box to the Salvation Army. Only some bells, a wreath my mother had made, and the angel remained. In that year of change, an earthy woman called Ruthie, a woman full of good sense and very little humour, came to keep house for my father. Ruthie was hardly the diminutive being her name would suggest, and I rather think my father feared her. That Christmas was subdued. There was no snow, and it was a very difficult one for my father. On Christmas Eve there was no tirade now to cast a pall over any magic. I wrapped gifts on the kitchen table. On the radio, a choir was singing from somewhere in Saskatchewan. Through the doorway, I could see my father leaning on the mantelpiece, sipping a brandy and staring into the fire. And then I watched him cross the room to the china cupboard. He reached in and brought out the celluloid angel from behind the blue Confederation plate. For a moment he looked at it, and then he turned on the little light at the end of the taper that had been held steadfastly in the clasped hands of the angel all these years. The ivory of the gown had yellowed, one of the golden wings was chipped, but the face, I thought, looked softer and sweeter than ever. Once more, the little angel was put on the window ledge against the darkness of the night, and my father returned to the fireplace. Ruthie came to help me set the table and tell me what else needed to be done for this last Christmas in the old house. "Ain't that queer he'd get that old thing and put it up there?" she asked as she looked at the little angel. My father turned and overheard her. Sheepishly, she laughed. "That sure is an old ornament. Looks as if she's having a smoke with the light out there in front of her." For the first time I noticed that my father had aged since my mother's death. "You know, Ruthie," he said, "two men looked through prison bars. One saw mud, the other stars." Turning away from the angel that glowed against the night, he rubbed the corner of his eye with one finger, and he went to put another log on the fire. Ruthie shrugged. "Your father sure is a funny man," she said. On the kitchen radio, the choir in Saskatchewan was zestfully singing the last refrain of "O Come All Ye Faithful."